Let's go beyond the connection. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today we have on a very special guest, Arvin Singh. And Arvin, I think what is incredible about your background, you spent over 2 decades at one of the world's largest wireless companies. You started out, you've got an executive MBA program from Pepperdine. You did an executive leadership program at Stanford. It's easy to say that you're one of the leading experts in the wireless industry, and now you actually consult and you work with all kinds of companies and startups and with advisory boards, and you have equity positions and all kinds of things. But what we're going to talk about today is really debunking a big myth. We need to be heavily tied to our wired network connections, where for a whole host of reasons, which you're going to help us understand today, is that we really need to have a wireless first network infrastructure strategy, and why. But before we get into that, I'd love to just turn it over to you for a minute or two. And if you could maybe expand a little bit more on your time at Verizon and what you're doing right now, and then we'll jump right into the conversation.
Sounds good. Hey, Steve, great to be with you today. And greetings to all your listeners. Look, man, the good news about wireless industry, there's lots of experts like myself. But what I'm extremely fortunate about is having spent about 2.5 decades almost at one of the leading, most innovative wireless telcos on the planet, and that is Verizon. Especially being in a seat where I led global and national technical pre-sales teams that were focused on engineering architecture for connected solutions, for IoT, for things like 5G, private and public 5G networks, neutral host networks, edge computing, all of these next-gen cutting-edge tech and network infrastructure that was serving our medium business, large enterprise, public sector constituents in meaningful ways. Since then, I took a brief micro-retirement from Verizon and founded Next-Gen Technology Advisory. And my focus really here is to help young companies and startups navigate a lot of the large, complex organizations. Our group is focused on really helping unlock value and growth for telecom service providers, in some cases, enterprise and B2B clients. Everything, like you said, everything from fundraising, seed investments to C-suite introductions, business development, advisory board engagements of sorts. So it's a good time to be in the industry because there's lots going on, as you can imagine.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things I remember from our previous conversation, you took business units inside of Verizon that had no revenue. They were startups really inside of Verizon, 5G and edge technologies, and grew them into billion-dollar businesses. And not only did that mean there's a lot of success for Verizon, but obviously that enabled a lot of success out in the marketplace. And that's where I want to start. I want to ask your help to have us debunk our current myths, how we think about network infrastructures, because it's so important these days. We can't operate as a business, whether it's reliance on CX in the network or just communicating amongst our own employees. We're distributed, we're all over the world. We rely on our networks more than ever before the day of AI. We could just keep going and going. Tell me why, in your mind, we shouldn't hold on to our long-standing perceptions of wireless isn't as reliable. We can't have a wireless first network infrastructure. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, it's a super interesting topic, man. In billion-dollar businesses, the joy of that was being on the cutting edge, taking next-gen network infrastructure that Verizon, which is one of the pioneers of bringing next-gen network infrastructure at scale. When you deploy 5G networks at scale, how do you monetize the capabilities? The 5G was unlike any other previous generation technology. So it brought lots of bells and whistles to it. And there's a pretty robust road ahead with it. So my team and our focus was really starting to make the market for what is today widely known across the industry. Things like fixed wireless access, FWA. There was a time in our history, Steve, when wireless was used particularly for backup connectivity to wired circuits. Businesses, branch connectivity needs and whatnot were wired connections. When there was a failover state, it would switch over to wireless. What we learned in those cases is customers were so impressed with the wireless performance, the reliability, the resiliency of the wireless network. Many times, almost a decade ago, customers wanted to use wireless as a primary connection. But we couldn't offer that because at the time it was on 4G networks, and we were carrying millions more customers on that network with IoT, smartphones, and everything else. So now when you're looking at telecom infrastructure that's built ubiquitously nationwide, 5G networks, 4G networks, there's ample capacity, spectrum, and access available, a reach of the wireless network, frankly, that businesses over the last 7 to 8 years have been using wireless as the primary form of connectivity. So this myth has been debunked that wireless might not be as reliable or as resilient to give you uninterrupted high-speed connection, low latency, a lot of capacity in the network for you to be able to put a lot of your business critical applications on this network. And then there's ways to do solutions deployment and end-to-end architecture with solutions like SD-WAN, software-defined WAN networks, that give you even further assurance and peace of mind about network path optimization, application performance and prioritization, a level of resiliency where you have multi-mode connections, wired, wireless, in some cases multi-carrier connectivity as well. I think we've come a long ways, frankly, in the last 5 to 7 years in terms of the maturity and the proof points that are out there of many businesses connecting. And I'm talking just in my experience before I left Verizon, we're talking tunes of hundreds of thousands of locations that were connected with such technology in primary form of connectivity, which is, it doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen overnight. It just speaks to the high quality networks that service providers are building these days.
Interesting, because what you're saying, we've been experiencing on this podcast too. We'll have construction companies that are like, we have to have a view into what's happening on our large construction sites, down to sensors that are on the tanks of the trucks that are delivering construction materials. We've had large national restaurant chains, and they're like, we don't have IT departments in every single location, but there's a trend towards the connected kitchen, and so much that's going on inside of the kitchen that not only travels to, we know our inventory levels, but how are we promising delivery times on the app and really getting good at that. To, we had on a gentleman, he was the head of IT for the chief technology officer for the world's largest airport, the Atlanta Hartsfield Airport. And he said, just putting our HVAC system in added 20,000 wireless sensors that we had to maintain and monitor. We live in the wireless world. So that's what I would love to ask you about. Is it really a choice these days?
Yeah, I think fundamentally that choice is evident today. If you're not a wireless first player or wireless first business, you might be putting yourself in a position where you get out executed, out competed by others that are competing in your same space. Frankly, the way I would build this picture for our audience, Steve, if I may, is think about the use at home. Most of us, there was a time in our life when we would walk up to this square box thing called TVs and turn it on. And then came the remote control, and we would surf channels and turn it on and off using the remote. These days, people talk to Alexa or Siri, and you watch your television through that mechanism. Similarly, the connected things in your home that are smart, from your garage opener to your vehicles you drive to the entrance into your house, be it smart locks, what have you, home alarm systems. Businesses are using connected thermostats, alarm systems, security surveillance, all these things. You take all of that experience, your sophistication of your consumers at home, and now give them an opportunity to transact with the business. If you're a business that's using yesterday's way of doing things and only limiting yourself with wired connectivity, you might not be pushing the boundaries on capabilities, on raising the standards, on creating next generation of customer experiences, using the right set of tech and tools and sensors to make it much more frictionless engagement for your clients. So I think this is where one of the things I like to advise businesses to do, in fact, even the work we used to do, is a bit of innovation, discovery, imagineering type of work. So imagine and engineer the possibilities and the vision you want to create.
You talked a lot about impact on the business, and I love you even took it out to like impact on CX, customer experience. There was a study that was done in 2003 by McKinsey that looked at over 400 highly profitable B2C and B2B companies, and the number one differentiator in the market was CX. We don't normally connect our networks to our customer experience, but we should today. And you're talking to startups and businesses that are selling into enterprises. And how are you connecting business growth with wireless connectivity? Because I know that when you're talking to the CEO and the founder or these people inside the organizations, they're thinking, bottom line, how is this going to help me grow my business? If you could help connect those dots, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, look, I think, Steve, it's no surprise customer experience is vital for overall business success, regardless of what industry, what business, and quite frankly, CX affects many facets of any business. And what's also, I think, fairly widely understood these days is the fact that retaining a customer is a lot cheaper than acquiring new ones. So, with that vein, getting customer experience using wireless connectivity, whether it's wireless first or wireless as primary connectivity, has a lot of areas where it can have very direct impact, frankly, with increasing your customer loyalty, increasing your brand advocacy. The word of mouth advertisements that you get clearly lowers the cost of acquisition of customers. In some cases, it's far more cost effective to go the path of wireless, plus your time to turn up, your time to go live or time to go to market improves rapidly versus waiting weeks and months to get a wired circuit to get pulled to your location. Now you're dropping a wireless appliance that's out of the box, pre-configured at turn up. It can power on and pick up, latch onto wireless signal and give you this, again, uninterrupted, high quality 5G connection that could be potentially configured for low latency with quality of service and such. Some of these things, again, it's a little bit of a journey. Not everybody is offering all of those same capabilities, but you pair a wireless connection with the right type of SD-WAN appliance, there's a lot more of those bells and whistles that you can apply to that connection. But your bottom line profitability, in my humble opinion, there's a direct impact of CS to your profitability. In some cases, frankly, we've seen this at telco service providers. Having built the kind of trust and customer experience might present the opportunity to be a premium provider, to have premium pricing or value-based service creation potentially.
The impact of CX on an organization is incredible. And I wanted to bring back what you talked about right at the beginning, because I'm still looking to address the whole issue of the perceptions of wireless and wired. And one of the things that you said was that especially in an SD-WAN hybrid WAN environment, nobody's writing the rules. We don't have to rely on one connection. Like, we should have multiple connections that are failover and constantly 8, 10 times a second being monitored and looked at. So in that kind of environment, why does it make sense? Does it address the issues of what if I only have wireless, or what if I only have wired? But that's just not the case anymore. We don't have to live in that environment.
Yeah, you're spot on. And I think if I was just to rewind the clock a little bit, a lot of these type of capabilities 10, 15 years ago, there were companies that were popping up like PepLink or PepWave or Hobnob and others that were trying to aggregate different wireless connections together. And it was being done somewhat ad hoc, somewhat without the consent of wireless telco operators. But nonetheless, it worked. There was a need that it served at the time. These days, SD-WAN vendors and providers have done good work in partnership with telco service providers. In fact, I was involved on the other side early on when SD-WAN vendors were optimizing their solution to work effectively with the wireless telco infrastructure. Because as nationwide wireless service providers, there's a responsibility to run networks that not only serve businesses in an effective manner, but millions of other connected smartphones, tablets, jetpacks, millions of IoT connected sensors, even connected cars and stuff. You can't jeopardize that experience either. So there's been good work done now in partnership with SD-WAN providers to make sure their solutions, work effectively on the wireless service provider's network. You can effectively pair multiple service providers' connections on one box, potentially along with a wired connection, and without creating any detrimental effect on the carrier's network. And you're now offering, again, anywhere, anytime connectivity, high reliability, potentially a boost in capacity, depending on the type of application needs, clearly low latency. So The other thing is, Steve, the maturity of the wireless networks, we've come a long way. So this wireless first approach, honestly, I'm surprised if it's still a notion out there within businesses, maybe for businesses in certain industries that haven't been as close to the wireless infrastructure and their direct primary use. But what we're seeing is wireless was really becoming the first choice because the pervasiveness of the signal and how far reaching it was, right? But the other bit of what makes wireless even more interesting now, Steve, is a lot of businesses have much higher set of requirements in terms of reliability, uptime, resilient connectivity. And this is where I think the game of wireless has changed tremendously over the last 5+ years with the introduction of private networks, private 4G or 5G networks. Now we're talking about putting wireless networks on campus in places where it didn't belong before, potentially industrial environments, manufacturing floors, environments that weren't population centers where telco service providers build their macro network infrastructure. So having a private dedicated radio access network, your own packet core, being able to isolate your traffic from the public wireless network, and being able to treat your traffic and your applications differently on that network, all of those keys to the kingdom now sits with the business, with the enterprise. And in many cases, these are managed service offering from telco service providers. So as an IT team, you don't have the burden to become a cellular wireless RF expert, because there's magic to that as well. These operators have spent decades to build and design RF networks, engineer nationwide indoor-outdoor architectures. You're taking that same page from that playbook and now applying it in a sort of a micro environment for your business, your enterprise.
So it's interesting because I love that explanation of the micro environment. One of the things that we haven't talked about yet is that the wireless world, that also includes like low orbit satellites. And because
Right.
one of the big issues with wireless is, and we all know, we get our cell phones and we're like, oh, shoot, I'm getting out of range. We worry about that. We now have these redundant options that we can bring in multiple ISPs. So satellite wireless is a very viable option, is one of those ISPs that we're bringing into the network.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, I think, Steve, this is where, as I think about the future of wireless networks and future of 5G, frankly, and what it could mean for connectivity, for IoT and whatnot, there's a tremendous road ahead here. And standards bodies like 3GPP that does the hard work of standardizing technologies like 5G in collaboration with the tech partners and telco service providers. Part of the standards framework is satellite connectivity. So 5G over satellite. So non-terrestrial networks is inherently now it's integrated SAT connectivity in not only smartphones, but IoT devices, right? So as you think about this, now we're taking connections or IoT deployments in the middle of nowhere, ultra rural environments. You're able to connect even with 5G as the standards mature and continue to evolve. Carriers are going from non-standalone 5G to standalone 5G network infrastructure. There's a lot of cool things that will start to happen. Things like network slicing, where carriers will harvest that same physical 5G infrastructure and create logical slices that essentially map network characteristics to the user type and the application. So think IoT, being able to serve a IoT deployment with low bandwidth, low latency, but high reliability connection, secure connection, or being able to support a higher speed, low latency slice for first responders and public safety. I think that's one we're starting to see that most carriers are starting to grapple with in their production network. But beyond that, 5G standards will also evolve with what is called reduced capability IoT, right? RedCap, 5G RedCap. And this is essentially, again, serving IoT deployments and sensors and whatnot with low power, low complexity, moderate bandwidth connections that are now effectively using the macro network infrastructure that's been built. And now the beauty of all of this, Steve, is again, what has been tested and proven on the ubiquitous nationwide macro network, those devices, those endpoints, those sensors also work when you do a private deployment, a campus-based network deployment. I'm particularly excited about that because in the short time relatively short time 5G has been around, there's over 350 operators globally that have commercially deployed 5G networks, right, across 160 plus countries. And with that comes a robust device ecosystem. So 5G, RedCap, IoT, all of these things will have explosive growth potential in the future. But outside of that, OT, operational technology, is a largely untapped opportunity. When you think about Industry 4.0, a lot of those things are traditionally wired connections, industrial Ethernet type of connectivity. Also part of the 5G evolution and that journey, there's things in front of us that are things like time-sensitive networking or deterministic networking. So 5G standalone, 5G advanced capabilities to come. I think the road to wireless is super duper interesting. It's one where you can't be a spectator of the game. You really have to get out there and assess the type of environment you have, what are your requirements and needs, and how would you reimagine the possibilities of your operation if you had a wireless first connection? What would you do differently? Would you place the connections somewhere else? Would you enable a lot more capabilities within your environment that might be out of question today? Those are the kind of, I think, discovery workshops that many, many partners and service providers offer to customers.
So when I hear you talk, I want you to debunk one more thing, because I hear about all of this and I could think, wow, the complexity is increasing dramatically. And I'm head of IT in my organization. And how am I going to keep up with all of this? And most IT leaders want less complexity. They're operating with smaller budgets, smaller teams, in distributed environments where they don't have IT staff. So they want simplicity. And how does the wireless evolution make it easier to be in IT and overseeing our networks these days?
Yeah, I think first it's a fair point. There's so much that are on the plates of executives leading global IT organizations or dispersed IT organizations nationwide. The good news here is not all of it, they don't have to take the journey on their own, frankly. The wireless evolution of the networks is becoming so pervasive where even Wi-Fi connectivity, Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 6E and whatnot, it's going to start to feel a lot more your LAN, wireless LAN connection at the end of the day. So the way to think about cellular wireless, I see, just like I mentioned, there's 5G NT and non-terrestrial networks. There's a coexistence of Wi-Fi in the path as well here. And these days you have appliances where you have multi-mode connectivity. We did deployments, frankly, Steve, where some of this were venue-based deployments, but you had a public cellular wireless network, you had a private cellular wireless 5G network, and then you had a Wi-Fi network. And there was different use case types, different device types that were being served across those three different network modalities. And some of the mission critical applications, again, were put on the private network. Point of sale terminals, payment processing, broadcast uploads for video. Guest experience largely was using Wi-Fi for uploading shorts to YouTube or Facebook or other social media platforms. The public network was also there for similar kind of use, or even simple voice calls or text messaging and things like that. So I think, one, carriers have done a fine job taking the latest and greatest infrastructure gear available to them to deploy them at scale and to deliver this robust network experience. And there's many studies from the likes of Root Metrics and JD Powers and others that I hope instills confidence in businesses that these networks are quite mature. And oh, by the way, it's backed by hundreds of billions of dollars. The organization I used to wear the jersey for was spending anywhere north of $20 billion of capital per year just in network investment. This is not factoring in the acquisition of mid-band, C-band spectrum and things like that. This was just yearly capital allocation of adding new sites, turning up new sites, building out fiber, continuing to build a robust 5G infrastructure nationwide. Take that and apply it times 3, times 4. Your wireless operators across America, in fact globally, are making serious investments in infrastructure. And those things, again, deliver a much more reliable network experience. And you need to find the right operator partners, but if not, really technology partners, be it systems integrators and other players, suppliers in the ecosystem that have SD-WAN solutions, that have cellular WAN gateways. There's many knowledgeable organizations that work with the service providers on a regular basis. They know the ins and outs of these wireless networks. So I say that only to say that I think the burden doesn't have to sit squarely on the CTO or the CIO of the organization. I think there's enough tools at our disposal to be able to source the right players and get a quick study on what is the right modality of connectivity and what problems can we solve and how effectively and in the timelines that you may be embarking upon.
So here's the final question I have for you, because we've covered so much territory here. If we could dial it to the IT executives that are watching this program today, if there was one takeaway that you wanted them to have, what would that takeaway be?
That's a good one. There's a lot of things. I had the joy of interfacing with IT execs and business execs of customers for the last 15 years. And it's a phenomenal learning opportunity. First, kudos to the work you guys are doing and leading for your respective businesses. It is by no imagination easy. And I'm impressed to see that businesses are giving IT the right seat at the table, frankly, for their growth and success, because that wasn't the case all the time. That has frankly changed in the last decade or so. My one advice would be test out a fixed wireless connection over 5G. If you haven't done so already, do it. And when you test it out, don't just do it for the sake of the connection. Put a business application on it. We had scenarios where we did excellent work outlining the proof of concept or proof of value and what we're looking to achieve, but connections got deployed and guest Wi-Fi was all it was used for. There's so much more these networks are capable of offering. So I would say, don't wait. Start today. Try it. Put business applications on there and see for yourself the kind of performance, reliability, and resiliency these networks offer. And oh, by the way, fixed wireless access is just a gateway into a lot more. If you are yearning for a lot more, there is next generation campus-based network offerings that providers have, from neutral host networks to private networks that's dedicated for your business, that's purpose-built for your needs and your applications. Embark on this journey and feel free to reach out to experts and companies like Bigleaf Networks who we're partnering with here. In fact, myself or any of your service providers you do business with today. So that would be my one guidance.
Excellent advice. And here's what I know is going to happen. People are going to have questions. Is it okay if I give out a link to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out and ask you questions?
Absolutely. Totally fine with that.
All right. The mission of this podcast is to bring different perspectives together throughout the network infrastructure industry. All of our years of experience, our unique insights and perspectives. And if we can help each other learn, then it's the rising tide that lifts all boats. And you, my friend, did a phenomenal job of a tsunami of a tidal wave today lifting boats. I just wanted to say that I really appreciated everything today.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate the opportunity and I hope there's more to come.